So now your laptop is very well salted and a little seasoned.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to eat this laptop right now, it would taste phenomenal, bro.
Lots of
good.
umami with the MSG is what you're saying?
Man, I'm telling this is like the joint with like the two different like seasoning packets with like the vegetable packet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So this laptop, chef's kiss.
So tasty.
If you're ever in a pinch, just pour ramen broth on your laptop and start snacking.
You know, although I don't know, I've always found the diodes to be more bitter than I'd prefer. I don't know.
Yeah, you do get a lot of heat out of the capacitors, and some people just aren't into that, you know?
There's a joke to be made about preferring my chips with dip, but I'll just let it go.
Very nice. Well, good form. Good form. See, this is what happens. And I actually had a bit that I was planning on deploying for this, but somehow this whole thing ended up being dumber than the dumb bit. So I'm actually good with this. This is perfect.
When the lunatics are left to run the asylum, this is what you get. Electronics jokes.
Electronics jokes. It's all we're good for. Right here on the Fairly KickAss podcast. And welcome to the Holy Shit, Why Would We Be Left to Our Own Devices podcast. As you probably gathered already, it is just me, that's Zack. It is him, that's Dan. We are minus a Jay. He is actually on his honeymoon. So, Jay, if you're listening, we love you. We wish you and your wonderful partner the best, and we hope that your travels are safe and without any sort of fuckery.
Many congratulations. Have fun. Take you too.
I'm so good for that. Like having someone say like something to me where you too is not the correct response, and I just can't stop myself.
It's an automatic response. It's the automatic gainsay one, and he says, "Here, thanks. Have a good day. Hey, you too."
You too. Goddamn Edge, goddamn Bono, just can't get away from him.
Thank God they didn't have an album come out this month.
That does bring up an interesting point that with Jay gone, he and I were typically the ones that would do the monthly album reviews with Dan doing the charting singles. With there just being the two of us, I don't know if you're the Will to my Jaden or vice versa. We'll figure that out in post. But we both did the charting singles and we both did the new album releases too. So this is going to be a slightly different format this month, possibly for July as well, just depending on how schedules shake. I think, in fact, it will be for July as well. And then we should be back to normal probably August, if not September. So, yeah, you're stuck with us for a bit, y'all.
Yeah, sorry. We promise once we get back later on this summer, we'll have far better episodes. But for now, hope. Also, don't forget, though, to keep an eye over at fairlykickass.com, because along with our posts for this, along with our ride-along playlist, if Jay is able to write from the road, he will send us his thoughts on what he's hearing. He has some very long travel ahead of him, some international travel where he'll be hitting up. So there are definitely opportunities for him to listen to stuff. And, well, you know, he's got opinions. He'll share them.
Absolutely.
At the same time, I'm also not putting it past him to send us a document that's just a picture of the beach he's currently on, and it just says, screw you guys, which would also be the correct response.
And we also might just post that on the website as well. Share it with
truth fact.
But yeah, I will leave it up to your dealer's choice, my friend. Do you want to go in the usual albums and then charting singles order? Or
yeah, okay. Yeah, let's do that.
What did you think overall about the albums of July? I know that, or June rather. I know that we're both kind of getting out of our wheelhouses here a little bit, but what was your kind of overall feel?
It was interesting on the album side, and I don't know how this normally fits, but I thought I found one great record. I found one record that I thought was great that I'm like, I'm going to go back and listen to more of this artist, but probably not going to be the biggest, like the most widest consumed kind of thing. And then a lot of
That is pretty much spot on from where I was at. I know you mentioned you found that great album. I struggled finding that great album. I found some decent albums, some good albums. My number one has some qualifiers attached to it, admittedly, that I will get to.
Okay.
But yeah, it was certainly not as strong as some of the months, that we've seen here already this year.
And real quick, just so I get this question out of the way for the reverse, what did you think of the charts? It was definitely not as heavy a list this time around. We didn't have too many major releases all charting in the same time, so we were able to kind of control it and let some new faces in there. But what did you get from your trip up and down Billboard's weekly ladder?
I honestly thought that there was going to be more that I hated, to be totally honest. And
Right.
I approached it a little bit differently than you in terms of I didn't necessarily give a score, but more so just a true ranking of 1 to, I want to say 27 total charting singles. And yeah, I was kind of surprised at some of them. I was not at all surprised at several of them. The ones that I expected to hate, I did hate, to be honest, but there were a few that kind of snuck up on me. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about that here in a bit.
Agreed. Definitely agreed on that one. But what we
What
should
about
do.
you?
Oh no. Duh. I have to answer that question when I pose it myself. Honestly, along that same line, that I was, and we'll talk about it. But I was honestly surprised and that I liked the majority of what it was. Everything got a pretty high rating, and even the stuff that was at the bottom wasn't terribly rated. But there's one specific thing that they all shared.
I can think of 2 or 3 things that fit that bill, so I'm stoked to talk about it and really to see kind of if we were in lockstep, number 1 and number 2, like where your numerical rankings matched up with my tier, or like numerical rankings.
Me too. And I will say this right now before we start, and I will put what do I have? I have this here watch with a battery that needs to be replaced.
Okay.
This $12 special that says our number one are the same artist but different songs.
Ooh, that is possible. That is it's the first part of that almost certainly. The second part, I think you are going to be surprised.
We'll see.
The watch is clean, dude. I'll take the watch. It's clean as hell.
Like I said, it's a $12 Walmart special, but it just needs a new battery.
It looks sharp, dude. Wouldn't mind having that timepiece right here.
You know what I wouldn't mind hearing either?
What's that?
I think your number 3 album.
Ah, very nice. See, we even without Jay, we still have the segues on point.
Yeah.
Well, I mentioned that my number 1 album comes with qualifiers. Truthfully, my number 3 album kind of does as well, in the sense that it is a bit of a homer pick for me. This is actually the second of these albums. Looks like it was 1996. So nearly 30 years ago that the original of this sequel came out. And it was wonderful when it dropped. There was not really a lot of stuff like it. If there was any issue with it, it was kind of single dimensional. It was kind of just, this is a thing, this is what it is. And that thing is violin. I do love violin. I adore the violin. It might be my second or third favorite instrument, but a whole album of violin covers of metal songs, while great for me, was probably not going to be anything that I would want to listen to over and over again. Fast forward almost 30 years into the future, and Apocalyptica has pretty much cornered the market on not just violin covers of songs, but just amazing orchestral interpretations, full stop. And this was the perfect time for them to revisit the catalog of Metallica. My number 3 album was Apocalyptica Plays Metallica Volume 2. It's one of those where if you really like Metallica, you're probably going to be more likely to enjoy this album. If you really like orchestral representations of music, again, this is going to be in your wheelhouse. But I would implore you to give it a try, even if you don't directly fall into either of those camps. For those who are familiar with Metallica's discography, I loved the interpretation of Saint Anger. If that doesn't tell you what you need to know about how great this album is, and really how much leaps and bounds better and unique and individual this album is than the first release from back in 1996, then I don't really know a better way to tell you.
That right there is enough ringing endorsement, because I assume that there's probably no drums on it?
I believe there was, but they weren't the worst drums in history.
Well, it means they were actual drums and not,
Exactly.
beer kegs.
God.
I'm never going to stop being that drum, literally or figuratively. Hey, man, looking forward to checking that one out.
Heck yeah. My friend, am looking forward to checking out your number 3.
Oh, I was supposed to rank this shit?
I mean,
Oopsie.
it's open to interpretation.
I mean, I have a little bit. One I do recommend you hear is what I would put at number 3. And I was surprised because I hadn't thought of Kate Nash in a while. Foundations is a great single, and it was all over the alt stations when I last had satellite radio and was listening to those on the regular basis. But I hadn't thought of her. It was just kind of didn't really collect. And then she was on Glow. Didn't know that. Done a couple movies. Had a musical open off Broadway last year, which was why it makes 9 Sad Symphonies all the more interesting to me, besides the fact that it hit a perfect spot being this melodic, melancholic, piano-driven soft pop with all of these. Maybe it's because I'm finally feeling finally is a lie, but I'm feeling the old age, and it's a record of going through heartbreak in your 30s at a time, at an advanced time in your life, not the young first love end of relationships that we get written about a lot, but the mature breakups, quote unquote, and how the feelings are the same. You go through the same cycle of emotions, but because you have so much more age there, but there's a major difference in the processing part, and she goes into detail with some beautifully written music and some beautifully written lyrics. And that face is what tells me that is not the record you expected me to pull out at all.
No. It wasn't that at all. It was, I think we've covered that on the show, both with albums. I think it's a little bit more challenging with charting singles just because that sort of more, it sounds unfair and derisive to say mature. So I'm not going to say it. I just don't know a better way to say it. Like you said,
yeah.
Like adult breakups. Again, adult in air quotes, like we're not adults here. Let's be realistic.
No. The best you could call us is seasoned.
Yeah. Grizzled, hardened, war-torn. The complexity, I think, is a way better way to put it than maturity, because, there's no age limit on having complex feelings, complex emotions. It's not common for folks to be able to illustrate them and articulate them in a way as amazing as Kate Nash can. An artist that's able to be accessible yet still eloquent, like that's such a hard combo. And admittedly, I did not get a chance to spin this, but it sounds like that accessible and articulate and eloquent was kind of the nail on the head.
Right. And one of the reasons I didn't get to as many, and we're probably going to have that happen a couple more times.
For sure.
Right now, though, I wouldn't mind if we figured out what your number 2 record was.
So we talked before about the album Paisley Dreams. It was a collab between 2, by all accounts, aging hip hop stars, one far more popular in the game, and then one not as popular, but still pretty damn good in Big Hit. That album slapped. It didn't slap for a couple of old dudes trying to make a rap album. It slapped full stop. It was one of the best hip hop albums so far of the year. So you think that's it, right? They can rest on their laurels, kind of say, hey, this is a good cap to a good career for us old guys, for us old heads. Not by the game standards, my friend, because he got back in the studio and decided to put out another album that I would put at least on the short list of best hip hop albums of 2024. My number 2 album is The Game and Woodboy G. The album is called Time. And Time is kind of a really apt title for this album, or if I were to name it something different, I would name it Timeless. But The Game is absolutely timeless in this album. He puts a stamp on it just as well as he did during Paisley Dreams. But I also want to kind of shout out Woodboy G specifically for being in the studio, for being toe to toe with someone who's been in the industry for years, for decades. And he carries his water just as well as you would expect, any fellow industry veteran to do. 12 tracks total. Each man features on 7 tracks. There's some overlap where both of them are on the same track. Those are killer, as you can imagine. Mind, Body, and Soul, the album opener, is fantastic. Check out Trap Boy Dreams as well, the latter of which features Words to Live By when Woodboy opines that he just wants to, quote, spend a couple M's in this life. Me too, Woodboy. Me too.
I don't know if it'll surprise you or not to know that I did get to listen to this one. And I actually have a little bit of a spin is that I think this tracks, the 4 that exclusively feature Woodboy G are probably the best.
Yeah.
But I think I was with you on that when I grabbed this album because it was oh shit, the game's still putting stuff out. Because I remember, back in college that he was probably at his commercial peak, I think maybe is the best way to put it.
Like early aughts, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Early aughts, and like I was still spinning for our parties, so I was spinning the game quite a bit. And then it just kind of fell off, but it's good to see. I was like, oh, great, he's still making music. Cool. And he's still making good music, which is the surprise after being in the game for 20 plus years now.
Yeah, it's a nice reminder to olds like us that, like, hey, people are still doing amazing things like after the age of 40. Like, it doesn't get as much publication because I feel like in whether it's Hollywood, whether it's the music industry, athletics, like once you hit that ripe old age of 40, like you're out to pasture. So it's always cool to see folks like him still getting it done, still getting it in, despite that, that age barrier.
So you're saying there's a chance is what...
Exactly. There's hope for us yet. And there's plenty of hope for your number 2.
Remember how I mentioned that, like, I had a pick of an album that I went back and went, okay, I'm going to check these guys out because they're more up my alley than probably most, and I wasn't afraid to admit that. Mm-hmm. I think that's where I'll go with my number 2. And what I'll do is go down under to a pair of indie rockers that grabbed their name from a 2003 Simpsons episode off of their 4th studio record, Rebuild Repeat. I'm grabbing Hockey Dad. And yes, as I'm looking down the list initially, I went, ooh, Hockey Dad. This could either be rather interesting or utter garbage, and I'm an idiot for just grabbing a name going, okay, yeah, well, of course. Because we're in the middle of the Stanley Cup Finals, and that's where my brain was, and of course I'm going to check it out. What did I get? Indie surf, or Australian indie surf garage rock, and I freaking loved it. I don't know how else to describe it. It is like there's no doubt that they were fed 60s garage power pop and then are filtering it through that. Plus, there's always a unique tweak that rock gets from the Aussies. Like, it's tough to describe because, like, AC/DC kind of set the mold, but then you go on to other groups, including some that we've covered in the past, like the Divinals, and you're like, okay, you got your own little thing for rock and roll down there, Australia. Well met. I like it. I'll take it. If you didn't get a chance to hear the record, Zach, I recommend it because I think it's also one of those things that would appeal to you. It has all the sensibilities, like I said, all the sensibilities of like surf rock and power pop, but there's plenty of the indie and even third wave punk.
Nice.
And that's when I said, all right, I'm going to check these guys out. And I was not disappointed. So, like, all right, I'm putting another one of your artists on my list, Australia. Thanks. It all started way back when we did our look into the Divinals, and I went, Australia's got a unique music scene. So basically, I touch myself.
As do many people for many different things. I did not get a chance to listen to most of this album. I admit that as you were talking about it, I was actually going through and listening to That's On You, which you mentioned. very reminiscent. And granted, I haven't listened to a lot of Real Estate, but that's the band that immediately jumped out at me in kind of like that jangly, kind of up in the cloud sort of, surf rock feel.
Yeah.
Always, kind of in the same sort of vein too. It's a really cool sound. It's a sound that I feel like is probably more prevalent in like the middle part of last decade,
Yeah.
which is why it's super
Yeah.
cool to hear that coming, still prevalent even today with any band.
I was trying to think of a good comparison for this record, and it doesn't get any less idiosyncratic because my brain went to a Grittier Cardigans album.
Yeah, I could totally see that.
And then I went, oh, that's even reaching in the description too. So highly recommended either way.
For sure.
But after all that, what would you top as your best, most listened to? Go find this record.
So the album art for this album shows the artist breaking out of an egg. And it doesn't necessarily seem that way when you look at it. But as you listen to the album, you kind of realize that the artist is breaking out of the egg, ready to absolutely confront every single entity in the world at large, and not in a good way. She absolutely does every bit of that and then some. To quote her, literally the very first words out of her mouth on the very first track on this album, quote, "I just want to kick this shit off by saying, fuck y'all." And the fuck is delivered in that way where you kind of hang on to the F just a little bit to make it hit that much harder, which is fitting because this album hits like an absolute hammer. My number one album of June 2024 is Megan by Megan Thee Stallion. Now, as I was looking at this album, I read a few reviews, and I seemed to kind of detect a similar vibe from the reviews. And that was like, this isn't like the Megan Thee Stallion of the past. This isn't the fun record that we wanted. This isn't like the summer classic that we wanted. This isn't the roll down the windows and play this album and let's all just have a good time that we wanted. And they're right. It's not at all that album. This is an album of pure, unadulterated revenge. This is an album where Megan has decided to shit on every single one of her detractors in that very forceful but still very impressive way that Megan Thee Stallion does. I don't think that should be detracted from at all, especially as we sit here in the era of the Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef, and J. Cole to a much lesser extent. I think that having someone who's willing to say, like, I feel like I've been done wrong, and I'm going to tell all of you exactly how I've been done wrong, and, that I'm not going to just stand there and be shit on. Like, there's power in that. As far as musically, is this Megan's best effort? I don't think so. But in terms of the subject matter, in terms of the fact that even not at her best, Megan still absolutely fucking brings it. Hiss being a perfect example of that. I don't necessarily want an entire career, an entire discography of albums that sound like this. I would love this to be a one-off, and then let's get back to the more fun, happy-go-lucky albums that, Megan kind of staked her claim on earlier in her career. But in its place, in its slice of time for right now, yeah, tell your story, tell all the haters off, fuck y'all.
I cannot tell you how disappointed I am that I did not get a chance to get to this album, especially because I stand for Megan Thee Stallion for how long now? That first single, Hiss, was my best single of February, and I look back at it just to make sure, because I'm like, I know we've talked about the lead into these, and I made a note next to Hiss. It just says flame emoji. And I feel like that's the perfect description of everything you just said. And Boa was top 5 back in May. And I can't wait to see what else hits as we go through the next couple of weeks. I'm sure a good chunk of that's going to hit the charts. It's just a matter of how the calendar works out. But I mean, everything you just said, like, part of her appeal has always been that intensity. and it's always been directed in a general, with a couple of exceptions. It's been directed in a general area.
Yeah.
But when she gets laser focused on it, flame emoji. That's the best. It's like shit's burning down. And like you said, this is a perfect time and a place. Is a snapshot at a point in her career, which makes me want to already look forward to how she may be able to integrate this side of her personality into the next set of songs. Not let it take over, but integrate it into the rest to her next move.
Well, if not Megan, then what did top your albums list for June of 2024?
Actually, another female artist. So let me talk to you about Charlie XCX. Of course. It was the first album I listened to when I started. That being Brat, her sixth studio record. And then nothing else that I had listened to came close. There's a reason I think it's probably the highest rated album of the year so far by a couple different critic sites or compilation sites or whatever. It's just one of those like, oh, we knew she did good pop and we knew she did fun pop, but didn't realize that she was going to take Dua Lipa's formula for electropop and throwing these retro sounds in and going back to a certain point in the history of like dance music and making that her own. And how Dua Lipa has made bringing disco back her mission. Charlie XCX is going to bring back the rave scene of the 90s.
Yes.
Charlie XCX want to make us remember what the Manchester scene was all about. And it is an intense 41 minutes that Brat just takes you from the front to the back. And it's one of those where I'll listen to it again, but only in a certain mood, knowing, and that's not a negative. Like, again, it's hard. Like there's stuff that is hardcore dance, and there's some very classic sounding dance beats there that you might have to be in a mood to listen to. So this may not be an everyday kind of record. If it is, bravo. Actually, I take it back because now I think about it, the lead single Von Dutch is probably one of those that's going to get into the rotation on the liked songs list. So there is that. But I think for me, that was the huge attraction, listening to this and going, oh, I remember these from the early 90s. This is doing, and they're all doing good work. Plus, I don't think she gets enough credit as the vocalist that as good a vocalist as she is, honestly.
Yeah, agreed. There was one thing you mentioned that really stuck out at me that like, this isn't, I'm trying to remember how you phrased it, but you said this isn't an album that you'd want to listen to every day, or maybe this is an album that you'd want to listen to every day. And I just want to say, if you are living the kind of life that you could really sink your teeth into Brat every single day, vibe to it, and really just get after it in that kind of way, like, I want your life because you are living correct.
I'll tell you this. Can I just borrow some of the energy that you inevitably have to have? just on a constant basis.
Seriously, like a tenth of that.
I don't know what rabbit hole we're going down.
Should we pivot?
I'm a little dizzy. Yes. Let's please do this.
Let's pivot. Let's pivot over to the charting singles, to Dan's domain. I am curious, how best do you usually go from like the top and then down to the bottom? Correct. And then the whole roller coaster kind of thing.
And here's the hard part about this whole thing, because this is normally about the time when I finally open my mic for these shows. So I let them go, and I usually don't have anything to contribute. It was a good month, but it also should tell you about my mindset when I take a look at this whole thing and I give my honorable mentions and my 3, 2, and 1, and you put it all together, and I have like a page and a half of stuff to read. And then I look at the bottom 3, and I have 2.5 pages of stuff to read. But that takes me to my number 3 track. Several years ago, Katy Perry tried to make a sensual, hot song around food metaphors. Yeah, that didn't work. Turns out she really kind of needed some softer singing and a simple beat, a lot less metaphor, probably a little less Migos too. Like the number 3 song of June, it is Lunch from Billie Eilish. And this is some of the most playful we've ever heard Billie, but at the same time, she is still just as direct and forceful as her first single. That forceful she's mastered without hitting with max impact, without going into pure aggression. There's a fine line to work there in that mood. And on here, as well as a good chunk of the record, she sounds more confident than ever from top to bottom. And I think there's a lot that goes into that, both personally and professionally. Of course, the production here is on point. The inclusion of the underwater guitar solo just gives the whole thing at the end a swimmy and wavy and beautifully punchy feel in a sensual manner, when none of that really went together, because literally that entire sentence on my script is all underlined in green because Grammar Check has no idea how to diagram that sentence, and neither do I.
I think the word confidence, I mean, that's really what this track is, just exuding it, just dripping it. It's unapologetic.
Oh, yeah.
This is just how the fuck I feel. And it's such a beautiful song. Like you said, the metaphor is not hard to pick up. It's not hard to detect exactly what's going on here, but it still doesn't hit you upside the head either. Like it's still kind of in the background, with that just kind of cool demeanor of the current incarnation. We've seen several iterations of Billie Eilish by now, but this one is the iteration that knows that she's the shit, that knows that she is just going to knock any track that she is a part of out of the park.
And I think there's something to be said that this is an indication, a perfect example to show that she knows who she is now and is very confident about that. And like you said, just another permutation of an artist who, by the way, is still 22.
20 fucking 2.
Yep. 22.
Can you imagine what we'll be talking about when Billie Eilish is 32?
No.
Or even 25?
No. Like I can't, but I also can't wait to hear what it sounds like.
You and me both. It won't be bad. I have a sinking suspicion.
No. I was also hoping your number 2 track wasn't bad at all either.
I did not think that my number 2 track was bad. I would certainly hope I wouldn't. As you know, Dan, and as many of the listeners know, like I am a fan of the kind of, softer tracks. I don't know if I'd call this track necessarily acoustic. I think it's certainly in the softer feel than other tracks on Hit Me Hard and Soft, but that one was Wildflower. Again, it's hard to sit here and just talk about the amazement of Billie Eilish. We've said so much already about it, not just today. That's kind of my hesitancy. It's like, what do you say about a topic that's already been discussed ad nauseum? I will at least mention this one being kind of not the polar opposite, but at least in the different sort of feel from Lunch. This is still a very confident Billie Eilish, but it's also a very soft and very tender Billie Eilish. And it's just a absolutely gorgeous song. Lyrically, just absolutely almost gutting in just how beautiful it is. I think the minimalism in the production, and this is not at all detracting from Billie, but I don't think Phineas gets as much credit as he should for these tracks sounding as amazing as they do. And this is one of those cases where more or less is more really ruled the day. And it was a great decision to go that route. And, the track was better for it. It highlighted Billie as it should. And it was just a beautiful production, vocal, just all of the above. Amazing track.
There's something you which, by the way, I had this in a group tied with several of the other tracks off the album in 6th for me. But there's something you said about the song about being devastating. I think that's the word you used.
Yeah.
And I completely agree. However, it is devastating in a different way than, say, Everything off of Happier Than Ever, or even What Was I Made For, released just last year off the Barbie soundtrack. It hits in a whole different way, but is still just as I said before, powerful.
Yeah.
And there's no better way to describe this. Just actually from top to bottom, a beautiful album.
Truthfully, yeah, it's the emotion that can be evoked by Billy is just otherworldly.
And since we've kind of mentioned it, I believe that this is a record that also landed in the top 3 for both you and Jay just a month ago. So if you go backwards about 4 episodes in the feed here for Affinity KickAss in your preferred podcast player, you'll find the reviews for May 2024. I would highly advise you to go back and listen to what they said about the record then, and add everything we're going to say about it right now.
Absolutely, yeah, it's worth your time. Is your number 2 worth our time? The answer is yes, of course.
Speaking of things that have been talked about, from the happy sounding sad to more happy sounding sad, actually, Zack Bryan has become one of the best wordsmiths in all of music, not really just country, actually, in recent years. And his upcoming The Great American Bar Scene looks to continue that trend. If the first single and the number 2 track of the month, Pink Skies, is any indication. Sorry, internally, I sounded like I dropped into my Casey Kasem. Honestly, it's a Zack Bryan song, so that there are certain boxes that will be checked. The simple instrumentation, the story told with lyrics that in that singer-songwriter style with more than a few country nods, obviously, and said lyrics are laden with emotion, particularly here describing the process of gathering for a funeral and the immediate aftermath of that. Bryan is channeling a journey lived through for the single, which has managed to find its way into the top 10 before it was really embraced by radio of any genre. It is catchy and reflective. It is upbeat and painful. It is as much about grieving and coping as it is about the ever-present harmonica, and the music is equally as important as the lyrics in Bryan's work. Yes, I wrote harmonica before you mentioned harmonica.
Yes. Again, great minds thinking alike.
Honestly, I don't know how else to describe Bryan's voice other than that of a country troubadour. He's really revived the country storyteller and pushed it into the front of a genre that's really unsure where or what it is right now. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But country is all the better for having him in it. I mean, Zack Bryan is this generation's Willie Nelson. And if Pink Skies is the lead off, I cannot wait to get into the meat of the new album.
You say that Zack Bryan is this generation's Willie Nelson. I feel like I could just almost hear the noses turning up, the poo-pooing coming from the peanut gallery. I'm 100% on board with what you said.
I mean, go back. There's just a ton of similarities in the styles and the way they perform and the way what they choose to write about, what the music they choose. It's there. It's all there. Whether you don't have to like it, but it's there.
Yeah, it's this isn't just some kind of fly by night talent either. He's coming up on his 5th studio album, which is actually dropping on July 4th. It's going to be called The Great American Bar Scene, and if the rest of the album is anywhere near as good, then we are in for an absolute delight.
Absolutely,
and one we'll probably be talking about next month.
Most definitely. I think you guys next month, and then I'll get to it in August, because that's how these things work.
Indeed.
Speaking of how these things work, I want to talk about some stuff that we're not as looking forward to.
We got to go to the bottom, don't we?
Oh, we have to go to the bottom. The question I have about 26 is, how much do you want to hear it?
Oh my God. The whole thing.
All right. Remember, I asked him and he said the whole thing.
It's true.
However, do you remember when I said just a few minutes ago that country was in a place where it wasn't sure what it wanted to be? Well, I take that back, because maybe one member of Nashville's new elite knows exactly where he's going at, and it's pass and go heading directly for Selloutsville. Unfortunately, he's also selling out arenas all over, so Morgan Wallen continues to be encouraged to do terrible things like guest on Moneybag Yo's Whiskey Whiskey. Morgan even brought one of his 6 lyrics with him for Yo to work with. And because we're still in the era where everything Wallen touches is a high charter, we get to hear his lovely overforced brand of singing take care of the hook, while Moneybag does absolutely nothing interesting, really, over a beat that's a little too loud, and that allows it to emphasize just how generic it really is. Seriously, Wallen's hook is the epitome of the lazy running that he's become way too known for. which is even worse when read dramatically, which is why I think I should do it.
Indeed.
Whiskey, whiskey, won't you go away? Come again some other day. 'Cause I'm in and came out to play, and I'm tired of it, tired of it. Hey, why don't I go eat some hay, make things out of clay, lie by the bay, I just may. Half of that is not Morgan Wallen. I dare you to figure out which it is.
Again, I had listened to the song recently, and I had to think about which half was wrong. And I'm still not sure I know for certain. Oh, God, it's so bad.
And then Wallen gets to take a verse. And while he may not be able to write, he sure can't rap either. I think that's what he's trying to do. Sing rap, though, maybe? Blessedly, it's only like 6 lines. And then he goes back to the chorus, and it's as bland as everything else. The most uninteresting man in country bring his particular brand of vanilla to a rap track and turned it into an absolute milquetoast. And while I'd like to hope that this exposes him and he starts taking a nosedive from here, I know more people will be applauding him for taking this risk and, quote, excelling, unquote. And he'll be back by the fall with another goddamn quintuple album consisting of 4 songs of 84 songs.
You're right on both counts.
God damn it.
Living here in Nashville and knowing the caliber of really talented musicians, not just country musicians, but just of all genres, and personally knowing musicians that would blow someone like Morgan Wallen out of the absolute water is beyond frustrating to me on a personal level.
Yeah.
I know there's popularity and whatever. I get that. It's the whole thing, but like it sticks in my craw to see him.
That's the problem. Like we get to a point where you just kind of look at somebody you're like, I get it, but why of all people is this the one that we chose to be popular? I don't understand.
Like, certainly there is some other dude with a mullet that can sing a hell of a lot better and write a hell of a lot better than Morgan Wallen, right?
Guaranteed.
In all of Nashville, there are probably a million of them. Why him?
I don't know. But I found 2 songs that were worse.
I don't know how. I'm intrigued. I'm as intrigued as you are, listeners. Jesus Christ.
All right. I don't know how else to start off talking about the song that hit number 27, but holy shit, I discovered that I do not like Jesse Murph's voice. Killing any potential for Cole Wetzel's attempt at making Seether's collab with Amy Lee Country Rock in now called High Road instead of Broken.
Oh, God.
I spent like a day and a half trying to figure out what Murph sounds like to me. And the best comparison I could come up with would be like, if Fergie at her worst was punched in the throat by a rampaging gazelle. It's somehow as squeaky as the kitchen floor at Meemaw's while also being as gravelly as the back road to Sam Hunt's private fishing hole on his 4,000-acre manicured ranch. Like, if I can outclass you vocally, you shouldn't be making singles.
I can't with you right now.
You need me to give you a minute?
Oh, you're good. Keep it rolling.
All right. You know, it's the second song in a row on my list where the feature artist outshines the main artist, and not in the good way, who is so busy being bland and uninteresting that I have already forgotten the main artist's name. Cole, Cratchit, Cosmic Brownie. What is your name, sir? And you can go ahead and lie to me, because in 6 months, all of your songs are going to be labeled as Daughtry or Jason Aldean anyway.
It's an insult to Daughtry.
Yes, I know. At first, though, I honestly thought that I did putting my playlist together. I was like, damn it, I played the non-Luda version and therefore worthless version of Dirt Road Anthem. Mm-hmm. Nope, I guess this is right. There's a dog squeaky chew toy with a hole in it singing the second verse.
This is very reminiscent of, is it Lisa Velez of Lisa Lisa and the Cult Jam that you and Jay have this like unfathomable hatred toward?
Here's the thing, though. I would much rather listen to Lisa Lisa, because despite the issue was they gave her stuff that she overpowered in, but could still sing.
Right.
Like Tom Waits would listen to Jeffy Murph and go, man, your voice sucks.
It was hard for me to kind of ascertain just the good or bad of Jesse Murph's voice, just because I agree, it was not my cup of tea either, just tonally. And I think the first time that I'd heard her voice, I believe she did a duet with Jelly Roll. In fact,
Yeah, she
that
did.
might have been Jelly Roll's first, or one of his first, big singles hitting the scene. And I thought the same thing then, that like, I just can't get into it. I don't know if it's good or bad. It just it does something in my brain that just is not what I want it to do.
It's interesting you said that, because when I went back and you were talking about Megan Thee Stallion, and I went back, because like I know Hiss was I had rated. I went back to my February list, and it turns out that Wild Ones was on that list, and it was my second to worst song. And what I wrote here next to it said, did you ever want to hear a Bratz doll screech crossover country hip hop at you?
Cold-blooded. Oh my God, that's so cold.
Unless you think that it was Rescued not being the worst song of the month, the only reason it was wasn't the worst song of the month is because that is the month that Tom McDonald and Ben Shapiro put out their shit fuck rap song.
Ah, that's right. I remember that old chestnut.
Yeah. Thankfully, not many of us do. Just like I hope not many of us will remember number 28. However, I actually have some good news.
Oh.
The worst song of June is a single artist. So, Russo Swerve.
Oh, nice.
If you look up the lyric video on YouTube for the number 26th or 28th, excuse me, and therefore worst single of the month, you'll come across the following as one of the top comments. I like it, but it's forgettable. Like, I just don't remember the lyrics, and I've listened to it 10 times. Samesies, my dude, except the first part, because I obviously do not like 21 Pilots' The Craving. In a month that saw Billie Eilish put out a mind-altering powerhouse, Charlie XCX drop a record of electro dance pop synth bangers a la Dua Lipa, and Luke Combs remind everyone that he can actually make good-ass country songs that would have fit right in on No Fences, showing up to the party with something as uninteresting as Whiskey Whiskey and High Road would have been bad enough. But to do it with the most forgettable lyrics this side of, well, pretty much anything Pitbull's put out from like 2003 onward? Yeah, I think that's about right. Doing that, though, is enough to guarantee that your shit will plummet to the bottom of my list. I mean, if this were 2008 and 21 Pilots were actually Death Cab for Cutie, this song makes sense. Well, I guess Death Cab, but like if Ben Gibbard caught a case of that good CTE and forgot what the English language was for 8 months and then was nursed back to writing health by a committee of Pat Monahan, Megan Trainor, Aaron Lewis, and Chad Kroger.
Where did you come from? This is peak, man. This is absolute peak. Please go on.
Speaking of, I mean, the song sounds like peak pop Death Cab. Like they heard Stay Young Go Dancing and thought, yeah, we can do that, but let's make sure everyone forgets that we ever put it out. I'd like to point out some of the terrible lyrics, but I needed to look them up 3 separate times. They made that much of an impression on me. Nah, I don't feel like doing 2 dramatic readings, but in the middle of the most vanilla of vanilla lightish pop songs, average lyrics otherwise are just god-awfully boring. In the middle of a month of actually good music being elevated, it's enough to make this the worst song of the month.
I was trying to figure out, because you had mentioned us being off by some number of songs. I had 27 total, you had 28. This was the 28th.
Oh,
I don't know how I didn't have it on my list.
You lucky bastard. You know why? Because it hit the radio chart this weekend.
Oh, okay. Okay. That makes sense.
So if you didn't listen to it, didn't catch it there after the weekend, then that's why. You literally missed nothing.
No, I was listening to it in the background and like I already forgot what I had heard like 2 seconds ago.
I think that's the worst part. And that's what I said. Like in a good month, being utterly forgettable, it's not going to do you any favors, bud. Don't get me wrong. For the end of the year, it'll end up somewhere in the early, like the back half of the list. It's not blatantly bad. I don't know how to, you know what I mean? Like I don't know how else to describe it. It's not bad. It's not a bad song, but there's just no reason to remember it beyond that first time you hear it. And that is bad if it's supposed to be a pop song.
Yeah. Yeah, at least some of their other less memorable songs had something entertaining or at least semi-interesting about them. Though the one that jumps out at me is The Hype, which is not like a song that you would think, "Oh, I remember that song fondly." Like most people don't. But at least like on that current listen, it's like this is a fun bop. I can vibe to this.
Right.
Um
Like I remember that one exists.
Exactly. You may not be able to sing it or hear it in your head, but it's like that was a song that happened. The Craving, you will ask me tomorrow what The Craving is, and I'll say, "Oh, that thing that made me go to Dairy Queen after our show." That's the only association that I'll have. That's a true story, by the way. I'm absolutely going to Dairy Queen after we're done here.
Oh, damn. I want ice cream too.
Yeah, seriously.
None of this has anything to do with either of our number one tracks. I just want to point it out, but distracted I am by ice cream. But I am more interested right now by your number one track. And like 5 minutes from now, I'll go back to ice cream.
Oh, yeah. Ice cream's not leaving this noggin for the next like 2 hours.
Nope.
Do you remember, or I guess I should say, don't you remember the song Superstar by the Carpenters?
I absolutely remember Superstar by the Carpenters.
So most of you listening remember this song, legendary track by a legendary duo. What folks might not know, and I think we discussed this on an episode a couple years ago when we talked about, I think, songs that had an original artist that was not the artist that was most familiar. And this was one of those songs. It was originally written by Bonnie Bramlett and Leon Russell, originally recorded by a duo by the name of Delaney and Bonnie. And the song's original title was Groupie, and the subtitle was Superstar, because this song was about a groupie, a very devoted, but not in the good way groupie. Obsessed is probably a much better way to put it. So consider that song in that lens, and just how much more creepy it makes the lyrics to think that it's not about a distant lover, but about an obsessed groupie. And crank that up to 17 million, and you'll get The Diner by Billie Eilish, my number one charting single of June of 2024. This is creepy casserole, with Billy playing the part of I don't even want to say groupie. It feels like that's not a strong enough description of the main subject of the song. It's more so a stalker. I don't think that that's, out of bounds to say here. And we don't necessarily know if this is, just a work of fiction, if it's in any way derived from real experiences that Billy has had, or maybe that folks that she knows has had. I'm certain that someone of Billy's level of fame has had run-ins at least similar to this before. I certainly hope not on this scale, but no matter what, it's unsettling. It's got to be one of the scariest things in the world. And to have Billy embody that individual with such believability was, like I said, creepy casserole. The line that really stuck out at me the most was towards the end of the song, where Billy said, "I memorized your number. Now I call you when I please. I tried to end it all, but now I'm back up on my feet. I saw you in the car with someone else and couldn't sleep. If something happens to him, you can bet that it was me." Yeah, I don't know how I didn't have a nightmare after I listened to the song, but a nightmare in the best possible way. It is a just creepy, cool, amazing track, and my favorite track on Hit Me Hard and Soft, and subsequently my favorite track of the month.
I think that is probably the best descriptor, that creepy cool. And I mean, it's absolutely about her experiences having a stalker. There's no doubt. But it also could be, as the more that I read about it, is this the next evolution for the narrator of Bad Guy? Like it's a very deep read into what's not there, because she said it's involved in her experiences with at least one stalker. But like some of these lyrics go, if the narrator from Bad Guy takes it too far, and we go into a bad suspense thriller movie, The Diner is the script.
100%.
Love that song.
It's a slasher flick.
Someone is going to end up with a kitchen knife in their chest at the end of this song,
with Billy just like looking over them, and just repeating through the credits, you can bet that it was me over and over again. You won't sleep again if you see it.
No.
I won't sleep again.
No, you put that together. No,
Worth
you
it,
won't
though.
do that. However, I'm going to have to change this watch battery myself.
Oh.
So I'm trying to think on the fly to transition what I wrote to, and I can't do it. I may have tipped my hand earlier and mentioned that Billie Eilish has a bunch of charting singles because of how He Hit Me Hard and Soft fell in the calendar. So there's no surprise that she continues to turn heads with the best charting hit of June. And that is L'amour de ma vie. That's Love of My Life in French. Just figured I'd throw that out there. And look, forget trying to figure out who it's about. That the who is not important. Focus on the track and how damn good it is. Sure, it's about feelings for a past lover, but also really so much more than that. There are so many genres and moods being mixed together here with the obvious poppy feels, bolstered by some jazz and some swing and with some loungy bossa nova mixed in for good measure, and then quick change, and here comes trip hop beats. With a synth-driven electropop throwback to wrap it all up where the vibes and the reverb both get jacked up to 11. And honestly, the postscript is more interesting than the examination of the breakup itself. Part of this is acknowledging that this probably isn't everyone's favorite track off this album, but it is most definitely mine. The best track, in my humble and correct opinion, off of one of the best records from last month, which makes it June's best. And no, don't think about that too much. Billboard's calendars are weird, man.
Yeah. It's inarguable. It's hard to rank all of these. I think the way that you rank in giving a score is a lot more of a correct representation of a lot of these tracks instead of my way of just ranking them one through whatever.
Maybe. I've always thought the way that I do it just gives me the opportunity to listen just kind of in mass without thinking about anything to connect it to it. Try to take it in one song at a time and then go back and build the story of the chart from there.
And I think that really, really works well because looking at my list I had it at number 15. And it's like, I didn't dislike this song enough for it to be one of my middle of the pack songs of the month. But
and that's the thing. I would say the same thing with the Diner, because I won't argue your choice of it being the best because it's a good choice. But I also had it in a large group somewhere in the middle, just because everything would have really rated higher on the higher end.
Right.
Like I spent how long eviscerating High Road and 21 Pilots, and they rated 69 and 68 respectively,
which is not bad at all.
And if you want to grade on the curve, that piece of shit I mentioned from February. All right, that's not fair because I gave it one lower than my lowest score ever, and that was 27.
Oof.
Because Ben Shapiro is barely worth 27.
It's a new low watermark, y'all.
It's going to be real hard to beat that one. That's definitely going to win the Aaron Lewis Award for the year, but it's going to be real hard to beat that one.
An actual award that we're going to give out at the end of this year and at the end of every year, by the way.
Ooh, can we mail him a random like 5-inch tall trophy?
Yes.
And we'll actually have it engraved, the Aaron Lewis Memorial Award for worst charting single of the year of our Lord 2024. You douche canoe.
I love that it's the memorial.
And I want that was for his career, but I also want douche canoe engraved on the front of that trophy.
We have the technology. I think we can make this happen. Oh my gosh.
You know what else we have the technology to do? Create a website where you can find all of this content and so much more by going over to fairlykickass.com. Not only will you get the full lists and a full playlist of everything we talked about here this evening, depending on how the time zones work out, we may also have Jay's contributions to some of the best and the worst that he listened to in this past month. There's also a ton of other stuff from some of our other shows that you should really go check out because there's just a lot of music and music-related stuff. And because we are no longer tied in by the man, we can catch you not only on Spotify, but stop me if I say something incorrectly, but on iTunes and on the iHeartRadio app and probably, I don't know, Amazon?
Definitely Amazon.
I don't know.
A whole lot of them.
Okay, Amazon. All right. Amazon's on the board. All right, show me potato salad.
Slowly walk away. Yeah, everywhere you get your podcasts. We have come across a few that we were not on their systems. Definitely let us know if we're not on your podcast provider of choice. We will get that resolved, and we will get that on there ASAP.
Should we do an American Top 40 style thing where we name all the new platforms we're on every month, or like heard on great podcast providers like Amazon Music and Deezer and KSHES, Solomon Islands.
I mean, we're absolutely doing that next month. Yeah. That bit is not dying on the vine.
Casey Kasem new stations bit. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to neither interrupt nor steal the thing where I usually go tell them all this stuff, and I just kind of rambled on. This is what happens when, again, there's no governor. Jay is usually our governor for the worst of this.
He really is. He's our guardrails, and we have no guardrails today. But what we do have is a Twitter account. It's at Fairly KickAss on all of them. I don't know why I say it 4 times when I do the plug, so I'm only going to say it once. At Fairly KickAss on Twitter, on Instagram, on Threads, and on TikTok. Dan already mentioned the website. Go check us out there. fairlykickass@gmail.com for any email correspondence. I will say that email will go to Dan and Jay and producer Nikki and myself. I will be lying to you when I say that because I still haven't set that up. It's only going to me right now. But I promise if I do get anything before I start to divert it to all of them, I will make sure to pass it along appropriately.
Don't worry about it. I can't remember my password anyway.
I don't know if I do either. It's written down somewhere, which is absolutely not the right thing to do with the password, but you know.
No, but like I literally have a little black book.
Hey, times are tough, man. Passwords.
It's full of passwords, not phone numbers, which tells you where I'm at.
You know, but if all your passwords were phone numbers and you just had them written down, no one would be the wiser. They would think, oh, that's just his analog contact list.
Damn,
and now it just blew up your spot. So,
well, can't do it now. All right,
that came and went very fast.
Well, I guess we're done now.
Yeah, that's as good a way as any to end this episode of the Fairly Kick-Ass podcast. And yeah, we're done now.
Turn the lights off on your way out.